First Chronicles chapter 4, and verse 1, I'm starting from there. The sons of Judah were Perez, Hezron, Carmi, Hur, and Shobal. Rhea, the son of Shobal, begot Jahath, and Jahath begot Ahumai and Lahad. These were the families of the Zorathites. These were the sons of the fathers of Etam, Jezreel, Ishma, and Idbash. And the name of their sister was Hazel Poni. You know, as we come to that part of the Bible where we go through the begats, so-and-so begat this one and so on, it's kind of boring, isn't it? You know, you just think, well, do I need to know this information? I really don't. And yet, I've conducted many funerals during the time of my ministry. And as you walk through the cemetery, there is from time to time a particular gravestone that you will come across that causes you to stop and think. And this is one from Spike Milligan. Spike Milligan was a British comedian, and on his tombstone, he had left the epitaph, "I told you I was ill." quite funny, actually. And so as we go through First Chronicles chapter 4, we're doing this like we're just walking through the cemetery and we're being told who begat whom and so on. But in verse 9, the Bible, the chronicler changes for some reason. He says, now Jabez was more honorable than his brothers, and his mother called his name Jabez, saying, because I bore him in pain. Jabez means he will cause you pain. And you ask yourself, why on earth would a mother give her son that name? Why does the chronicler decide to do something completely different from all the begats and the begats? He suddenly changes and he says that Jabez was more honorable. What was it about Jabez that causes the chronicler to pause and to give us information that he's not sharing about any of the others? Jabez was more honorable. Here was a man that sisters could go out with this brother knowing that his intentions were honorable. If Jabez was a businessman or whatever, you know, you could trust him. If he said this job was $500, then you could trust him. You could rely on his word. So the chronicler feels it's important. There's something about Jabez that he wants us to know. Jabez was the same guy that you saw at church, as he was at home, as he was at work. He was honorable. Roger Dudley, he is an Adventist author, and he wrote the book, The World of the Teenager. And what Dudley did was to interview young people who had left the church. Why did you leave the church? And overwhelmingly, again and again, young people were talking about the hypocrisy of their parents. They were one thing at church, but something different at home. And Jabez was the kind of guy who was the same at church, he was the same at home. And you know, the people who see us the most are family members. They see us as we really are. And so you could be the smiling, loving elder at church, but what are you really like at home? And so Jabez, we can be confident that Jabez was the same person at church as he was at home, as he was at work. He was more honorable than his brothers. And so I want you to notice that Jabez is not being compared with strangers. The Bible says he was more honorable than his brothers. How do you tell who is dishonorable and who is honorable? You know, years ago, I used to visit the Broadmoor Hospital in England. And if on the left of the screen, you will see two brothers. Their names are Ronnie and Reggie Cray. And these guys were notorious gangland criminals who were detained at Her Majesty's pleasure in what was the Broadmoor Hospital, which was a high security hospital for the mentally deranged. So my wife and I, when we were students at Newbold, we would go through on a Saturday afternoon to visit the inmates at Broadmoor. And from time to time, we would see Ronnie and Reggie Cray sitting there, and they just looked like ordinary fellas. In fact, one of the challenges that I had when I walked into the visiting room was to tell who was the visitor and who was the inmate, because you just can't. Nobody has dishonorable written on their forehead. It comes out in their behavior, it comes out in their conduct. And so the Bible tells us that his mother called his name Jabez because I bore him in pain. A woman, when she's in labor, has sorrow, but when her hour comes, as soon as she has given birth to the child, she no longer remembers the anguish for the joy that a human being has been born into the world. You know, when my two children were born, I was privileged to be in the birthing room with my wife, and I remember the pain that she went through. But as soon as they placed the baby in her arms, there was just this smile, this joy that her face just lit up because of this bundle of joy that had been placed into her arms. And so we wonder to ourselves, why would a mother label her son with a name like that? And so this kid grows up with the shame and embarrassment of knowing that he caused his mother pain. You know, my wife and I, we lived in South Africa for 3 years. I was pastoring there for a while. And one of the things that really struck me was the intentionality with which the Africans chose the name of their children. So you constantly often come across a name, thank you, gift, blessing, sweetness, noble, well-beloved. These names were very, very carefully chosen, and you know, they hoped that their children would reflect the personality of these names. And I remember I arrived in South Africa a few weeks before my wife did, and I went to the bank and opened up an account for both of us. But when she came, she then had to come with me to the bank to register on the account. And so as we sat down in front of the cashier, I said, well, Sweetness, my wife is here. I'd like to put her name on the account. And Rowena was looking at me and thinking, why are you calling this girl Sweetness? What's going on? And I had to say, listen, no, this is her name. That's her name, Sweetness, you know? And so they gave these wonderful names to their children. But as Jabez grew up, every time there was trouble, he was reminded that he would cause pain. Literally, he was being reminded that he was a troublemaker. What a legacy his mother gave to him. And do you take this man? You would just imagine on the day he was getting married, do you take this man? He will cause you pain to be your lawful wedded husband. What a legacy. I do take you, Jabez, you will cause me pain. Which woman's going to say that? You know, so you can see the burden that was laid on this child by a mother who was really not thinking very, very carefully about what she was doing. And so we can very often find ourselves hamstrung by the circumstances that life throws at us. You know, we cannot break out of the legacy that has been thrown to us. And so here you have a picture of Jean Thompson, her son Stephen, and her granddaughter Jessica. And these people featured in one of our British newspapers because this was 3 generations of dole. I think in America, you will say these people they are receiving money from the state in order to live. I can't remember the term that you use over there, but 3 generations. So there is mother, then there's son, and now there's granddaughter, and all 3 of them are just trapped in this way of living and don't seem to have the will to be able to get out. And so many people find themselves like that. So when I beat on you, I can't help myself because I saw my father beating my mother. He used to beat on us. And so when I do it, it's really, I cannot help myself because that's the legacy that's been handed down to me. I wish I could stop, but I just can't help myself. My brothers were druggies, my parents were druggies. So what hope is there for me? It should not be surprising that I'm living this life. I'm trapped in this kind of lifestyle because of my heritage. Heart disease, hypertension, diabetes run in my family. It's genetic, so I'm bound to get it. And I'm sure that many of you will have heard that repeatedly. People say that to me regularly. Diabetes runs in my family. Hypertension runs in my family. So it's not surprising that I've got it. I'm a liar and a thief, but that's because of my background. My father was in prison several times, and so was my mother and siblings. I've got no chance. And there are those with that legacy of their heritage, and they seem trapped, and there is no way out. My dad had many children with different women, and so it is part of who I am. I remember doing the baby blessing in church of a young couple. They were not married at the time. And sometime later, the young lady called me. She said, "Will you come over and see me?" And so I went to see this young lady, and she said, "Pastor, you talk to my boyfriend. We've had a row and he's walked out on me and he's left me pregnant. So there's two children. And there's also another girl on this road that he's got pregnant. So that's 3 children, one's here and 2 on the way." And she said, "Pastor, will you go and talk to him?" And so she gave me his address, and I went to visit this young man. And when I got there, he said to me, "Look, I don't want anybody disturbing my peace. I don't know why you're here. I don't want anybody disturbing me." But surprisingly, he let me in. And as we began to talk, he said to me, "Look, she's mistaken about the 3 kids. It's actually 4. So here he was volunteering information. She was wrong about the children. It's 3. It's not 3, but 4. And then as we talked, I asked him to tell me about his brothers and sisters. And he said, "There's 11 of us. My father had 11 children with different women." And here was this young man walking in the footsteps of his father, no intention of shaking off the shackles. He was now on his 4th child, and clearly was on his way to making many more, because that's the legacy that his father had thrown to him. Ellen White tells us that 9/10 of the diseases from which men suffer have their foundation in the mind. Diseases sometimes produced and often greatly aggravated by the imagination. The mind controls the whole man. All our actions, good or bad, have their source in the mind. It is the mind that worships God and allies us to heavenly beings. All the physical organs are servants of the mind. And I really like that quote. All the physical organs are the servants of the mind, and the nerves are the messengers that transmit its orders to every part of the body, guiding the motions of the living machinery. And so the mind is a powerful organ that impacts on everything that we do. Timothy Jennings, in his book, The God-Shaped Brain, shares the story of Sam Schumann. Sam Schumann in the 1970s was diagnosed with liver cancer and given months to live. And sure enough, within a few months, Sam was dead. But when they carried out the autopsy, Sam Schumann did not die from liver cancer. But his mind told him, he had been told he had liver cancer, and he bought into that, and he didn't fight. He just gave in, and sure enough, died within a few months from liver cancer. The harmonious action of all the parts, brain, bone, and muscle is necessary to the full and healthful development of the human organism. Now, many of you will have heard this, that in May 2013, actress Angelina Jolie announced that she had cut off both her breasts because she was living with an 87% risk of breast cancer and a 50% risk of ovarian cancer. If only she had heard of IIOM, Dr. Sharps, she could have saved herself a great deal of problems there. And so, but Jolie was convinced that she was living with that 87% risk, and so took the drastic action. And Angelina Jolie is actually one of the world's top influencers. Millions of people follow her, and whatever she does, they do. But women were not running to cut off their breasts. Not many people followed Angelina on that one. But I want you to notice this. Genetics load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And if only Angelina was aware of that truth, she may have acted differently. Genetics load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, clicking the bell icon so you're notified whenever we upload.